Alright guys, we are back with another Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order update. This time I want to go in a little bit on the stock allocation and situation with the system. Now if you missed my previous video, I'll have it linked in the description below so you can check out the pre-order situation. I'm going to go over the Cliff Notes version of it, but essentially we have a 3-month pause on tariffs from Vietnam, or to Vietnam, I should say more like it. So therefore Nintendo probably wouldn't have some type of crazy extra importing cost that they would have to factor into the Nintendo Switch 2 price, because the only reason why we haven't been able to pre-order the system not at this point is because there was a potential looming huge tariff here in the West, here in the United States, and it looks like that is paused for 3 months because of the current administration, because people were getting like uppity, or people were getting afraid, yippee, or something like that. I'll put it up on screen what the president had to say. So essentially people were worried and mad or upset, or whatever the case is, so he's paused it for right now. So that does give Nintendo time to do exactly what we think that they're going to do with this new article from Bloomberg, which is going to tie in to the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders and when I think it's going to drop. So let's get into what Bloomberg had to say about Nintendo stockpiling millions of Nintendo Switch 2 consoles from Vietnam ahead of the launch. Especially with the most recent news, you're going to want to check this one out. So Bloomberg has shed a bit more light on the manufacturing process that's going down with the Nintendo Switch 2. So the system is scheduled to launch on June 5th. Nintendo has doubled and tripled down on that. They actually just recently said, Mario Kart World, check it out. Here's the thing, it's coming out June 5th. They are not moving from that date. Even though we have no pre-orders here in the US, they are not moving from that date. So I think that they are anticipating that everything's going to go smoothly and the system is going to launch. And they're probably going to have to eat a small tariff extra on that. But overall, I think it will be fine if they do. I think the system is still going to launch at that $450 price range. Now let's continue on here. So customs data obtained by Bloomberg has shown that the company has been importing 750,000 original Nintendo Switch console units from Vietnam, which were destined for the United States of America in February 2025 alone. That suggests that Nintendo is building a huge stockpile of millions of Nintendo Switch 2 consoles from the Southeast Asian country in time for the Nintendo Switch 2's June 5th, 2025 launch. Now, Bloomberg also adds that Nintendo is the only console maker in the country and is naturally ramping up its output for the big day. Now, there's something that I wanted to add with this, right? Because this, in terms of stockpiling and getting systems ready, there is a huge demand for the Nintendo Switch 2. Yes, you can sit there and go on Twitter and go online, drop the price, but we know how this goes, guys. We've been over this a bunch of times, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm defending them. There are things that I'm going to call out, or that I have when it comes to Mario Kart, some of the pacing, some of the situations in terms of communication. There's some things that they absolutely could have done better. Welcome Tour being packaged in. There's a number of different things, but if you think that people aren't going to pre-order this system because some random YouTubers online that have been hating for how many years or whatever are saying don't buy it or something, you guys are out of your mind, because Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was the same thing. People were going absolutely crazy, and that's going to be the second best-selling Pokemon game of all time. Before the Nintendo Switch 1 launched, there were a slew of videos from bigger and smaller content creators calling the Nintendo Switch 1 a flop. It's going to flop. They learned nothing from the Wii U. Nintendo's stupid. They're dumb. They don't know what they're doing. The communication's bad. This system's gonna flop because it doesn't have X, Y, and Z game. There were podcasts. There were all these different things, and it ended up doing insanely good because the concept of having one Nintendo system that plays all of your Nintendo games, and you're not going to have to split it up between a home console and a portable, is a new concept for Nintendo that's never been done for them, and it is a treasure trove of phenomenal games to play, and you have backwards compatibility with all of the great Switch 1 games, which are going to be getting updates and different things to them, and Nintendo Switch 2 editions to where they'll play better. This is going to be a very popular and good system overall. People are going to buy it. Nintendo fans are not terminally online sitting here consuming every single video that people put up complaining about X, Y, or Z. Now, once again, a lot of those are actually legitimate complaints. I have my own legitimate complaints, but at the end of the day, people are going to buy a Nintendo system to play the Nintendo games like Mario Kart, Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda, Pokemon. There's going to be a slew of big games, not just right now, but throughout the rest of the year that are coming out, like with the Kirby Air Riders game, in addition to Donkey Kong and Pokemon Legends ZA. Hyrule Warriors is coming as well. Nintendo's going to drop that new Mario game as well. They're going to drop that. They're going to drop a new Smash Brothers. There's going to be a new Animal Crossing, and there's going to be a big new generation Pokemon game, and this system is going to fly off the shelves overall. So Nintendo needs to get ready. Why am I saying all this? Nintendo needs to get ready for that rush of people. They need to get ready so they make sure that they have enough stock, so when the system launches in June, that they are not caught pretty much with no stock. They are not caught with different retailers saying, oh, we don't have any more, or that they sold out so quickly. There's got to be enough to meet the demand overall, because this system is going to be popular, like I said. So we're going to have to wait and see exactly how that goes overall, but I do anticipate this system being incredibly popular. But I also anticipate the channel becoming more popular with all of you guys that are not subscribed to the channel hitting that subscribe button. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get the best Nintendo Switch 2 RPG news and more as soon as it drops. Now, to kind of follow up one more time on this here, I do think that the pre-orders for the US and Canada could be announced after the Mario Kart World Nintendo Direct. That Direct is going down on April 17th, and that's going to be at 6 a.m. PT, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be live streaming it. We will be live about an hour or so beforehand to get all of the hype, all of your questions, all of your comments, and going over AMAs on the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you have questions, instead of listening to people that are grifting you and listening to people that are spreading misinformation to cash in on something that they don't like, you can come here and actually get the accurate information from someone who wants you to be best informed as an actual consumer advocate, instead of someone playing that role online for money. So I do want you guys to know everything when it comes to the system, the good, the bad, the ins, the outs, everything, games, content, and what happened before it, so we can get a good sense of where the system's going to go. So I think that's the most important thing for the consumers out there, is getting the right information overall, and we're going to deliver that here. So I do think pre-orders could happen, or could be announced, not happen at the Mario Kart World Direct, but I think it's going to be announced at that Mario Kart World Direct. So maybe the following week or the next number of days, and then we could see things go live after that, pretty much end of April. So it's going to be very exciting. But let's go ahead and move on to the next topic, and that's going to be the digital triggers versus analog triggers situation that Nintendo is dealing with. Since pretty much the Wii, Nintendo has decided to go with digital triggers, where it's just essentially a button press instead of the analog, where it's more kind of like the spongy, it sinks in like a trigger like on PlayStation and on Xbox. And people have wondered, why have they done that? There's shooting games and racing games and titles that would be better for that. So Nintendo had that same thing crop up here. Some thought that they might move over to the analog trigger buttons, but nope, they stayed with the digital trigger buttons. And here was Nintendo's justification from their lead tech guy, Mr. Sasaki. So the reason why the Nintendo Switch 2 does have digital triggers is because, quote, from the hardware side, we looked on what we were asked to do. There were a lot of, let's say, very fussy developers around us who wanted to go this route. That's why we went the route we did. So essentially what he's trying to say here, before I get to the rest of it, is that he's trying to say that the developers that make the games for the Nintendo Switch 2 were saying, you have to make it like this. You have to make it like this. We like it like this. They're going with the tried and true. Nintendo has had not analog triggers for a while now. They use digital triggers for all of their systems since the GameCube, their handheld systems as well, and they feel that it's just better for the games that they make to have that type. Now, and I do think that the analog triggers are really good, usually for the traditional big shooter, the Call of Duty or the racing game that Microsoft would make, like Forza or Gran Turismo. So I do think it makes sense overall. Or even some of the action games that Sony makes, like God of War 2018 and things like that. Having those analog triggers makes sense for them. But for Nintendo, I'm not so sure for platformers or for RPGs or for the games that they make. So very interesting to see that. Now, the Nintendo Switch 2 producer Koichi Kawamoto also added this, saying that, quote, in terms of analog buttons on the shoulders, there were positives but also negatives. You lose a little bit of instancy when they're analog. We considered it and we decided that instant input would be a better option. That's why we decided to move forward with this decision. And as someone who plays on Microsoft Sony's controllers, and I think that they're great, I have to agree. I don't play shooters. I don't play racers as much, so I don't need to kind of throttle a racing game and all of that. I don't need to try to throttle my shot and shooting games. I just don't play them enough for me to say, okay, yeah, I want to go all in on that. I know some people do and some people like that, but for me, having that instant response when it comes to an RPG like Xenoblade, if I'm scrolling through the different arts, or having a platforming game where you have to press the shoulder button to do something or to do a different type of move, to me, that instant response is better for the platformers, for the action games, for the RPGs and stuff that I like to play on the Nintendo Switch. If I'm playing some type of big racing game or shooter, usually it's going to be on the other platforms. I mean, I don't necessarily like those type of games overall, but if I am, I'm playing on there. So I don't really necessarily need it for Nintendo's big first-party games, and that's the reason why I buy a Nintendo system, is to play Nintendo's quality first-party games. So for me, it's not really that big of a deal. I know for other people, it might be overall. Now, I do think it's interesting though, because with Nintendo going this route with the digital triggers at this point, I think it just kind of follows the tradition that they've done before. They have a GameCube controller that's coming out that's going to have the analog triggers, and obviously GameCube uses that for different games, so it makes sense there. Nintendo actually put out a statement stating that, hey, look, this GameCube controller is only compatible with the classics, but they've actually put that statement out with all the other controllers that they've put out, and it was so funny to see the amount of people who didn't know that because they don't care or they don't use those controllers, but actually talked about it to try to elicit some type of response online, just kind of add to the, oh, they're taking L's and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, did you not know that the other ones didn't do that either? But hey, it is what it is. This is how it goes before the system launches. There's going to be a lot of information passed. There's going to be a lot of different things that happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that GameCube controller, if it does work for other stuff. I think it will, but obviously button layouts and stuff are different. So you put that disclaimer in there. It's not too surprising considering what they did with the Nintendo Switch and the Wii and the DS and the 3DS and so many systems. Really, it was a long time ago with the GameCube. Over 20 plus years ago, that system launched, they decided to go with the analog triggers. So I understand that some people might not like it, but I'm okay with it. Now, let's get into the next topic here. And I want to talk about one of these secret system sellers for the Nintendo Switch 2 that nobody is actually talking about at this point. I think the sales in Japan kind of show that this game is going to have a pretty long life in front of it. So the Famitsu sales for the week ending in March 31st, 2025 through April 6th showed a couple of things that are incredibly interesting. One, the Nintendo Switch hype train just doesn't really end, and Japan is completely waiting for the next Nintendo Switch 2 system, because even still at this point, we know the Japanese audience absolutely knows about the Nintendo Switch 2, and they actually don't care. The Nintendo Switch still sold 35,000 units plus in Japan, beating out every other system by more than 3 times, or about 3 times or more. The PlayStation 5 was able to sell 12,000 plus units. The Xbox Series is essentially DOA at this point with 148 units sold, and the PS4 with that awesome 21 units. But the bigger thing here, the next thing that it really shows, is Super Mario Party Jamboree. This game came out back in October of last year. So we're looking at 6 months, half a year at this point. Time flies really fast, and it's still charting in the top 10, the #1 game for this past week. So that tells me there is longevity, there is an evergreen status, and I think that's the reason why Nintendo wanted to get a Mario Party game as quick as possible. A brand new big Mario Party game is probably going to take a bit more time to release, but if they do something like this in the meantime, they can really leverage that audience to convince the Japanese consumers that love Mario Party, that continuously buy the game, to pick up the Jamboree TV plus the camera. And I think that's why Nintendo spent a lot of time on that game overall in the most recent Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. They really took a lot of time and said, hey, look at this Jamboree TV and all this cool stuff that you can do, because it takes advantage of some of the new technology that was not possible with the Nintendo Switch 1. And with this 11,487 units with over 1.2 million sold in Japan, and that's just physical, not counting the digital sales where it's still a top 20 game every single week. I think that Super Mario Party Jamboree plus Jamboree TV is going to be huge in Japan when it launches on the Nintendo Switch 2, and a secret type of system seller for Nintendo. The evergreen games here are also really good too, and the fact that people are getting hyped and ready. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe never ends. I mean, literally, it's been in like the top 20 the whole generation from 2017 all the way on. And you can even count it back to the Wii U days. It was still like in the top 20, top 30 every single week. This game has been a mainstay. It's the GTA of Japan at this point, and I do think that Mario Kart World is going to be a massive system seller for the Nintendo Switch 2 in Japan, where the games and the system price is actually much better and much more favorable in Japan than it is in other countries. So I do think that things are looking very interesting for Japan overall. Donkey Kong as well. Donkey Kong Country Returns in that top 10. That's what's coming out 1 month after Nintendo Switch drops. Donkey Kong Bonanza. So I cannot wait to cover the Japanese sales once the Nintendo Switch 2 drops. I can't wait to see how much stock allocation it has, what games are charting, and what the Japanese audience is looking to pick up more so than ever. I think it's going to be a wild 2025. But what are your thoughts overall when it comes to everything that we discussed here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 content like this video with developers going over the power of the Nintendo Switch 2, in addition to how Donkey Kong Bonanza and Mario Kart World are going to be genre-defining games for the Nintendo Switch 2 system. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.